Welcome back, y'all. Last episode, we started our bigger city this side of the river. This episode, we're gonna continue to build off of it, but I have something else that I kind of need to get done before this series can progress. It's been something that I've mentioned a couple times already, but it's the terrain. You look at Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, and they're both sitting in a pretty big valley. Louisville as well, to a lesser extent. So I think adding some hills will really help cement that we're in the Ohio River Valley. It'll also provide a challenge to me. As I said last episode, I'm not that great at terraforming, so it's kind of interesting to have to learn how to make a hill. It took several tries and it looks really rough for most of the video, but I think it'll serve its purpose well, giving us a dynamic map with some challenging areas to have to build around. So starting off, we have to get kind of a baseline for the heights of the hills. So I'm just gonna basically drag out a shelf into the back corner here. And then once I have that up, I will set the increase height on the terraforming tool just to see how tall we can actually build. So once we have that peak height, essentially, I'm just going to lower this shelf a little bit because it's just too high. I want it to be an accurate height for the region. So that was pretty challenging. It was also challenging trying to figure out, realistically, how would these hills form? So I think I kind of got it. As you see here, I pretty much had to delete all the infrastructure this side of the map that wasn't already incorporated into our towns, just because it just cuts through the hills there. So that was kind of fun to have to do, and then we'll just work our new infrastructure in around the hills, into the hills as they get built out. Looking at some photos of the region, it's very obvious that the hills kind of look like veins. So I try here as my first attempt to try to recreate that. It doesn't go too well, as you can see. I'm like sloping it and it looks nasty. But you can see the idea is already forming. My brain is doing gymnastics on how to do this. Here's where I have the brilliant idea of adding to the hill instead of taking away from it, and you can tell I like that better. It makes more sense than trying to cut away from the hill. So that's gonna be the baseline for how I'm building this from here on out. And what are the Appalachian Mountains except for, well, really old mountains? So basically, the best way I've found is to make it look like a bit of a younger mountain range and then just hit it with as much of the slope tool as possible to give basically a flash erosion effect onto the mountain. I'm also doing a little bit of future planning here. I'm imagining a highway running through these hills this way. Seems like the most logical place for somebody to kind of slope the terrain out. I spent a good portion of this just kind of chipping away at these shelves that I've made using this mountain brush. I feel like the tendrils on it give it a good texture that I can then go back and smooth over and just make it look nice and smooth, like an old hill that's just worn down by erosion. Yeah, the hills are they're coming along. I think this is the part where it really started to click for me. You can see it's looking a little bit more fleshed out, less of an abstract idea. Maybe not exactly like a hill. Looks kind of like, I don't know, a skeleton or something, but you get it. But this part right here turns out really cool, I think. It basically forms into like a, I don't really know what you call it, but like a gulch or something. The way, like it's sidelines. I thought it turned out pretty cool. Here's what I was talking about, where you build up the mountain and then you just hit it with the slope tool. The next step after softening out the hill is to just lay on a thick layer of trees. And I mean a thick layer of trees. My PC was chugging after this, let me tell you. The ultimate test here is to see how it looks from the ground level. So let me go down to our little gas station here and just see how tall these hills really are. Here we are at Cincinnati, about a block or two away from the river, and the heights look pretty in line to me. There's the height there, and there it is there. I think it works good. Here you can see the hills are taking shape. We'll just add a little bit more trees. Apply a few more details like adding extra tendrils off of the base of the hills. Smooth them out. And I'd say it looks pretty good. Now we'll come back and add some of these outside connections. Make sure some of the trees aren't sitting in the road. And I'd say the hills are done. I feel like they add a lot of dimension to the area that we didn't really have before. Now the town feels sort of boxed in up against the river, which is pretty interesting. So now let's work on getting back some of those outside connections we deleted before. Alright, here I'll add back in that 2-lane highway, and I'll just leave it as this 2-lane for right now. I'll probably upgrade it into an interstate once we start building out the city, just to make sure that we have the capacity to support all the incoming movements into the town. Alright, looking at this intersection behind the steel mill, we can tell it is backed up. It is currently the only way to get across the river in the region, so we need to make sure that those movements can happen easily without any trouble, because this is just basically a clogged artery that is not going to do any favors for our city. Okay, so and then this bridge will continue across the river here and go, that direction there, probably to another outside connection. We're not gonna connect it up yet, but I'm just gonna leave this bridge here like it's in progress, just so that we know where this connection will be going across the river. And the area that I chose for this is kind of tricky because we have the steel mill to one side, this neighborhood to the other, and it's all backed up to the river, so we're working with limited space. It's not an ideal location, but it's kind of the only option we have for this connection here without just completely uprooting a whole lot of buildings. I just don't realistically think it would happen. Not right now. All right, and so this part right here is going to be a trumpet intersection, just to make sure we can minimize the footprint as much as possible for this. There's no way we can get a connection on the other side of the local highway there, so this will have to make do. All right, and here's how the intersection's looking so far. As you can tell, it doesn't seem like anybody's really wanting to go over, so it's just good and stuck. Actually, it's paused. Wow. Anyways, here I go for something that is, in hindsight, ridiculously stupid. But, I wanted to add a little bit of whimsy. Maybe this was like the first intersection they came up with in like the 60s or the 70s. It's, about as dangerous as it could be. I built this all out and I went to my girlfriend. I was like, what do you think of this cool looking intersection? And she said, why don't you just make a roundabout? Oh, yeah, that would be better. Alright, I'll press play and watch as everybody tries to frantically find their lane again. And, give them a second. But already it looks like traffic is moving. The only thing I'm missing is a slip lane from this direction, so they don't have to bother with the roundabout. I'll add another slip lane on this end so they can avoid the roundabout as well. Go back and fix some of the lane connections here just to make sure people aren't making stupid moves. And I'd say it looks pretty good, with one exception. Let's watch the traffic flow to that back on ramp that's going northbound. You see it there? The traffic is avoiding the otherwise unused highway lane to take the exit ramp back onto the highway. So that connection just is not going to work. So instead of making it a half cloverleaf, we're going to turn it into a trumpet, and that way we can make sure all the traffic is, driving where it's supposed to, and anybody coming on or off this highway on this side, well, pretty much the entire thing has to go through the roundabout. Now that that's all taken care of, I'm going to continue to build out the town. First, I'm going to place down a high school because we need one in this town. And then I'll just go through a little bit of a time lapse, putting down some medium density apartments and a few other things. much, but it's just a few things that I think add to the general vibe of the waterfront. Now, I've been racking my head trying to figure out what to put in this awkward corner behind the inlet for the river. And I think I figured it out. If we're missing just a little bit of high density in the town. I don't want too much here to keep it in that small town feel, but we just need something. And that something is the Sunshine Hotel. It looks good on its own, but I feel like we can make a few additions to really give it more of a resort type feel. Such as an extended awning over the road. Now, this is gas station props, but you can see what I'm going for here. We don't really have any awning assets to my knowledge that would work for this. We could also add a pool using custom water decals, concrete surfaces, so they have somewhere to swim that's not in the Ohio River. Make sure the pool is surrounded by a fence to keep it legal. We could add some lounge chairs here as well. A few parasols. And of course, we should keep it all within the same theme of the hotel. Maybe add a few bits of landscaping to give it that extra pop. I particularly like the palm ferns and rose bushes. We can give them a few tennis courts to really make the place look bougie. Make sure they also have the concrete surface to match the rest of the grounds. And maybe a little outdoor eating area next to this pretty cool statue. Cannot forget the parking. We gotta have the parking. And then I think it would be a complete waste if they didn't make use of the waterway out back. So we'll put down just a couple of boats here. And there we have it. I feel like it looks a little bit more like a resort here. It's better than just the standard asset that we had. It's a destination. I'll also add these EU mid-rise apartment assets from PDX mods. And the Riverside Grill, which is just one of my favorite assets. Oh, and I'll put down some custom parking. I also built out the little marina. It's not my best work, so I didn't really add that footage into this. Now, let me tell you, when I saw these houses on the PDX mod page, this was an instant gift for me. These were exactly what I've been waiting for forever. You see these kinds of like bungalows and almost like Sears kit houses all over the place around here. So they will make a perfect addition to our build. Now, the only issue I have with these right now is that they are all 5 units deep, either with the front-facing garage or a backwards-facing garage for carriageways. So if you want any blocks that are tighter than 5 units deep, you'll have to go in and delete all of the garages and decorations using better bulldozer. So it'll take a little bit of time, but you can still get the desired effects with these. So I know I said I'd spare you guys the suburbs, but after seeing these assets, I just couldn't help myself. I had to make another suburb. I I know I'm making a lot of suburbs in this build, but hey, what's more American than a good old suburb? If you guys have any other ideas for how to differentiate these, leave some suggestions in the comments. And since you're already in the comments, maybe leave a like and consider subscribing. You want to know what I think pairs nicely with some suburbs? Maybe a big box store, like this Kmart. And don't worry, I'm not going to make custom parking for this asset. That's a little too much even for me. I'm just gonna put down these one-way parking roads, and I think they do the job pretty good, with some detailing, of course. Alright, I feel like I went a little light on the detailing. I put some signs there to let people know the Kmart's in town, and pretty sparse vegetation as far as I'm concerned. But, I think that's probably realistic. They'd probably do bare minimum. Now I'm just gonna focus on getting a death care service in the area, as we have one over there, but I'm seeing some death care needs pop up in the newer parts. So I'm just gonna place this little cemetery and church asset in the new neighborhood. Switching focus, I'm gonna return back to the train depot on the port and just give it a little bit of love. Well, maybe not love per se, but a few extra details. I really wanted to try to recreate that feel of this train depot's seen better days. So I'm using some of these concrete surfaces. I'm just gonna mismatch them. I'll put some, dirty decals, as I tend to do in the area. And of course, lots of vegetation sticking through the cracks. And then I really like placing down some of these empty lots throughout an area. I just feel like it's a good way to show how well off an area is doing, just, based off of how many empty lots there are. And then, of course, I gotta add a few extra train cars just to spruce the place up a bit. I'm not gonna go ham on these. It's gonna be relatively sparse, just to try to really create the feeling that this isn't really a huge hub. And maybe at one point it was, but not anymore. And I gotta say, I do love the P. Delmo tall grass. I use it so much in this build. I just do just a nice little carpet of the long grass, then a little bit of bushes, just to give that look like it. This is an empty lot that's been here for quite a while. For these trees to have all grown through here, I'm imagining multiple decades this lot's been sitting here like this. I really like how this turned out. I'm using the fig bush from the California foliage pack, and the way you can get it to like overhang from the key, I just think it looks pretty cool. Alright, so the area is not finished, but it's already looking better. It's looking dingy, it's looking dirty, looks vacant almost. And then here I'm going to add a little bit of custom warehousing right next to the rail depot. I'm not going to go absolutely crazy with this one, but I just wanted something to fill in the gaps, something unique that's not just the, copy paste industry in the game. And so I give them a custom asphalt parking lot. And I'm thinking this is going to be a vehicle warehouse. Maybe these cars all just came off of the train that rolled into the depot or something. And they're bound for maybe the enterprise rental we have by the steel mill, or maybe they're going to another dealership in town. Either way, I give them the standard detailing that I do pretty much every time I detail an industrial asset. And give them a couple of trailers, maybe they have spare parts or what have you. Either way, it's a nice thing to just fill in the gaps. And I'm right back at the train depot. I have a few more ideas to detail this up, so I'm just gonna let us go through a time lapse, and I'll catch you guys after it's over. Alright, y'all, that's gonna be it for me. I feel like we got a lot of stuff done today, with the hills in the back to add to the scenery, to the hotel slash resort, and detailing up of the rail yard to, more suburbs, obviously, but a Kmart too, so that's pretty cool. But with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching so far, and thank you to all the support I've been getting for this series. I really do appreciate it. Please leave a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Also leave a comment and suggest something to add to the build. As you can see, there are a lot of empty spaces that need to get filled. But with that, I hope y'all have a good one.